Hey, what is up, Dazed and Confused Fantasy Football League? I'm bringing you the final regular season recap of the 2024 season. We just had week 14. Now, 2024 was our 10th season as a league, so it's a pretty big milestone. And the regular season is now wrapped up, and we got the playoff bracket set. It's going to be an exciting one. Starting things off by looking at the standings. Brian and Greg lead the divisions. Brian taking the number one overall seed in a three-way tie with Austin and Finn that went to points for. Um, then Austin taking the two seed, Finn taking the three seed, Mateo with the four seed, and Dennis with the five seed. There was a four-way tie at 7 and 7 that went to Mateo and Dennis, both on points for. Um, and Austin took it over Finn, I believe, on head-to-head record. So with that, let's get to the most recent week of games and see what happened. How did we get here? Let's start things off with my own matchup against Finn. This was a sad, depressing game that kind of captured the last couple weeks of my season to a T. Um, Finn had a pretty mediocre game. He got a zero from Jaden Reed on Thursday night that put me in a place where I actually thought I had a chance to win. But unfortunately, guys like Chuba and Jerry Judy did just enough to propel him to victory. On the other side of things, I was forced to start Braylon Allen and Kenneth Gainwell because Brees was hurt and Brian Robinson is on bye. My only two healthy running backs on the roster. I picked up a bunch of dart throws, um, some of which could have won me the game. For example, if I had started Patrick Taylor over Gainwell, I would have beaten Finn. I tried to trade Ray for Charbonnet earlier in the week, and then he ended up being the starter and putting up 20 something, so I could have won that way. I had the win in the tight end position. I think I've started the wrong tight end the last 4 or 5 weeks in a row. So just overall, very frustrating game. Disley had a chance to win it for me and got injured at the end of the first half, so it's just that kind of season. Jalen Hurts and JSN continued doing great things for me, and Adam Thielen had a great game as well. But that eliminated me with the loss because I have significantly fewer points for than Mark, Dennis, and Mateo. So that's how that shook out. So on to Mark versus Greg. Now going into the week, Mark was kind of the front runner for a one of the later playoff slots due to his high points for and pretty good head-to-heads with everyone else. However, a super dud week caused by Kenneth Walker being hurt and a shaky quarterback start. I don't know what was going on with this decision. I guess Will Levis wouldn't have been much better, but Jameis would have. I think if he starts Jameis, he makes the playoffs. I'll have to double check that against Dennis's score, but I do think he does with 10 extra points. Good pickup of Sincere McCormick. He sincerely had a great game. Um, Especially because I was also looking for running backs on the waiver wires, and Mark beat me to this guy, which I'm pretty disappointed about for my own sake. But good for Mark finding him. That's a late season gem that put up a solid tenner. Shaky receiver performance, shaky tight end performance, shaky flex performance, and nothing special down in the defense kicker slots. Um, that led to a pretty mediocre 86 score that really opened the door for Mateo and Dennis to take those last two spots. Greg with the win secured the bye because if he won, he had the tiebreaker over Dennis on head to head. And he did it with a pretty average game. Couple 10 to 12 pieces from his key players. Amon Ra, wide receiver two, had a pretty rough game, which is kind of surprising. But Matthew Wright, who I think he must have picked up this week because I'm pretty sure this was his only week starting, put up 17. So that's a great pickup by Greg to secure the victory. Um, Nothing crazy on his bench. He could have had a better tight end score, but again, it didn't really matter because he beat Mark by 13. Um, so then, knowing that Mark put up 86, Dennis needed to get to 105, and Mateo needs to get to 131 for them to pass Mark in points for and take those playoff spots from him. So moving on to Mateo. Mateo cleared it easily. He had the a top 10 performance all time for a week, led by Puka going crazy. Justin Jefferson got his first touchdown since week 6 and then put up another one. Chase Brown has been an incredible running back for pretty much the entire season after Zach Moss went down. Yeah, one game under 10. So that was a great draft pick by Mateo to get him in the ninth round, especially with Mateo going zero running back. And that was one of the biggest reasons that Mateo's in the playoffs is that his zero RB strategy eventually paid off, even if he started pretty poorly. His running backs got hot just in time, and the running back and the wide receivers were so good that they could propel him to, I think, a 5 game win streak to end it. And then a great game from Darnold. Bo Nix on bye. He picks up Darnold. Darnold throws 5 touchdowns and a huge win over the Falcons. So great week for Mateo. He also beat me to Urendo because he had a higher waiver priority than me. And so he also had a 25 piece on the bench. So I think if he adds 20 points with that, I think he sets the record or is at least the second best game of all time. So that's a darn good week, even with a zero in the defense spot. Josh needed a win to have any chance at making the playoffs, but obviously, when you're going up against a historic performance, it's going to be tough to pull off. Josh had a fair game. He was struggling with running backs as well. Tank, he had to pick up. Kareem Hunt, he traded uh, with Mark to get because Josh's entire team was on bye or injured this week, including key players like Joe Mixon, Zay Flowers, and the Texans defense. And then, of course, you can't tell the story of Josh's season without Christian McCaffrey playing all of 3 games. So Josh did well to be in a spot to make the playoffs, but just came up a little bit short. And so finally, we go into the other matchup that really mattered for the playoffs, which is Dennis against Ray. Dennis again needed 105 to clinch based on Mark's score. And he got it. He took a beating from Ray because Ray had one, I think maybe his best week of the season on the back of Jordan Addison catching 3 touchdowns, Rashad White becoming the starter with Bucky Irving going down, David Montgomery doing his thing, and Tyreek finally playing like he was drafted to play. But the real story is Dennis on Monday night needed almost I think over a 40 piece to take the playoff spot from Mark, from just Jamar and Brandon Aubrey. And boy, did Jamar deliver. He got loose. And he put up 38.1, including the game-winning 40-yard touchdown to seal it. Tough, tough scene for Mark. Josh probably got some PTSD seeing a Dennis receiver go get 30 plus in an elimination game. And there's just a crazy comeback by Dennis, even in a loss, especially because he was at 68, I think, going into Monday night, which, he was setting up for a terrible week if Jamar had a dud. Um, Other than that, really Tyrone Tracy and the Titans D were his only other two good performances. Everybody else was pretty mediocre, and that's what put him in a spot to need a historic performance to get there. All right, now this game mattered for the 1 seed and the first place in the East Division. Winner take all in that regard. And Brian took it. Brian took it by a Josh Allen. Um, Brian put up exactly 100 if you take away Josh Allen, which is a great score without a quarterback, but you expect somebody who puts up 100 with everyone but their quarterback to get in the ballpark of, 115 to 125. Nope. Josh Allen had 6 touchdowns and set the modern era record for most quarterback points in a game. So that pretty crazy game there. And I think Brian has put up over 150 in like 4 or 5 straight weeks. So he is cruising into the playoffs with a stacked roster. He's definitely the team to beat going into it, and he's trying to repeat the magic of his season a couple of years ago, where he was also the number one overall seed and took it down. Austin, on the other hand, did what he could with a lot of his key players on bye. Terry McLaurin's wide receiver, top 5 receiver. Jonathan Taylor would be a top 5 running back if he was healthy all year. Derrick Henry is a top 2 running back, and Jaden Daniels is a top six quarterback, I guess. And with all of them on bye and Bucky Irving getting hurt, he never really had that much of a shot against Josh Allen doing something like that. But I mean, Brian or Austin's depth is so good that even if he'd been playing anyone else, he has a good shot to win just because with all these guys on bye, he still fielded a team significantly better than like mine, for example. So good season for both of them. Brian takes the one that matters and he gets the bye. And finally, the game that didn't matter so much that Vinny didn't start a kicker. Vinny takes it 121 to 106 over Phil. Pretty good game from Josh Jacobs, Quentin Johnson. That's a brave start, but it pays off. Phil had good games from his big guys, Davon, Bijan, George Kittle. Tough defense start, but I assume that's just because Phil wasn't really paying attention. It didn't set his lineup. Um, and on the bench, he had two great performances that I guess could have turned it. Yeah, both of them. If he had started both of them, he would have won. But again, doesn't really matter. Um, Fine seasons for both of them. Probably pretty disappointing for Phil because I think his team was a lot better than his record showed. But it is what it is. All right, so now before we move into the playoffs, I just wanted to shout out the some of the records that were set this year in the regular season, including Josh, Brian, and Brian's breaking a 4-year-old record 3 times in the span of 2 weeks. Especially with Josh putting up this 176 score that you know that could hold for a while based on how long the 164 held. Um, we also have a new biggest win. Brian over me in week 12 when he put up 172, and I put up 74. So tough to see, but I didn't lose by 100, so we're living. And then single season wise, Brian absolutely cleared the field for most points for ever in a single season. And I would guess that even with adjusting for PPR and the extra game in the season, to assume that Brian has the most points per game, um, era adjusted anyway, because he had a crazy back half to the season. All right, so now going to the playoff bracket, Brian and Greg get the bye. Mateo and Finn play each other, and Dennis and Austin play each other. Getting into Mateo and Finn's game, they're projected within point 0.1 of each other, which is crazy. Um, pretty even teams. I mean, Cuba's got the backfield to himself now. I guess explains the high projection here. Oh, also going against the Cowboys. Yeah, it's a big matchup there. Garendo going against the Rams. That's another good matchup there. Obviously, Mateo's receivers are expected to do numbers, especially over Finn's kind of iffy, shaky receivers. It looks like he has Jaden Reed on the bench after that 0 point performance last week. Um, but yeah, it's this is gonna be hopefully a pretty close game, but um, I feel like I have to give it to Mateo based on how hot he is coming into it. He's on a 4 or 5 game win streak, and he's got to get revenge for this week 9 matchup. And then in terms of history, pretty close. Mateo 8-6 over Finn, but Finn has the one playoff win back in 2022. So only 2 years ago, Finn took him down in the playoffs. Oh yeah, that's right. Mateo doesn't have a playoff win. He's 0-5, I think. So guess I'm predicting him to break the curse. He can finally change his name away from Marvin Lewis in the news. So that'll be exciting. It's gonna be a fun one to pay attention to. Now we got Dennis against Austin. Now, going into it, I feel like Austin has the much better team, just based on the regular season and how he kind of felt like one of the best teams in the league the whole year. But Dennis has Jamar Chase, and so you can't really count him out ever. Averages 20 points a game. He's liable to put up a 40 piece at any given moment. So Dennis can never be counted out, but I think with Austin's team back at full strength with Jaden Daniels, his two stud running backs, Cooper Kupp and Terry, and he's got James Conner in the flex, which is, probably the best flex that anyone in the league has going into this point in the season. I'm going to give the edge to Austin. Um, so yeah, so let's look at the historical. Dennis has a pretty big lead over Austin, and they've never played in the playoffs before, so this will be a fun one. Both of these guys are two-time champs, so they both have plenty of playoff experience and know what it takes to win. All right, well, that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck in the playoffs, everyone.